Welcome to today's History of the Upper Ohio Valley, brought to you as a public service by ESV Teleproductions. We will address issues and concerns of residents in this area. The opinions expressed are solely those of the host and the guest. I'm your host, Bob Connors. This week, our featured guest will be John Puch, a former combat pilot in the Vietnam War, and Wendy Anderson, the new director of the St. Clairsville Area Chamber of Commerce. And after Wendy, you will hear my commentary on current political events. John will be discussing his experiences as a combat pilot, and Wendy will be discussing events going on in and about the Chamber of Commerce. So you started out, how did you decide to become a pilot?
It was an unusual situation. I was going to Kent State University in ROTC, and it took the Air Force officer's qualification test, and I had no inclination that I'd ever be a pilot. I thought that was completely out of the realm of possibilities. And after the test, which is before the computer age, it took forever to get the results back. We were called in one by one to tell us what our results were of that test. And the professor of air science said, well, I qualified 1P. And I said, well, what's that mean? He says, well, you're qualified to go to pilot training. And this probably was one of the, well, I've said some stupid things, but it's probably one of the most stupid things I said. Do I have to?
So they just dumped this at you.
Well, and with the look on his face, everybody else was trying to get the pilot training, and I had no inclination. I thought I'd be going into something in the science field. I was a chemistry major, and I thought I'd be going into the science field in the Air Force, something to do with my chemistry or something. And he said, well, you don't have to go to pilot training. And we talked for a little bit, and then I went back to the dorm, and on the way back, I said, I got to find out a little more about this pilot training stuff. Other people make it through. I probably should give it a shot.
Give it a shot.
So I dumped my books and went back and asked to see him again, and I said, I need to know a little more about this pilot training stuff. That might be something I could be interested in.
That's pretty interesting. Let's say hello to our guest who may be watching. We're going to be talking with John Puch, a former captain in the United States Air Force who flew many missions in Vietnam in an F-4 Phantom jet. And we're going to learn a little bit about what is it like to be in a combat jet and do the job that these brave men do as veterans. So, John, let's go on with, now we know that you just got pulled into this and it wasn't your idea. What kind of plane did you fly? Maybe tell us about that Phantom.
Well, you mean in pilot training, there was a T-37 was the primary trainer, and it flew pretty much like a light airplane, a heavy light airplane, and the secondary was a supersonic T-38, which flew more like a jet fighter, and that's what got me interested in really a fighter airplane. And I worked hard in pilot training because the top slots went to the pilots that were in the top part of their class to get a fighter, and I really wanted an F-100, which was the top fighter at that time. And there was only, when the selection came down, there was only one F-100. It was a pre-service guy that was in, he was already a captain, and he was the top of the class, and he wanted that F-100, so I knew that was out of the picture. And there was two other airplanes, F-4Cs, and they were so new, nobody knew anything about them. I asked all the instructors and everybody on the base, and nobody knew anything about F-4 Phantoms. And the only slots available were back seat F-4 Phantoms at the time, because they said that the F-4 Phantom was so sophisticated that you had to have 3,000 to 5,000 hours of flying time to fly the front seat. And so I thought, well, at least the back seat is eventually going to be a front seat slot, and started making calls to find out about really how long it'd expect to take to get to the front seat. And the best guess was 1 year. Well, as it turned out, the squadron I was in was the last one to form, and there was two of us lieutenants that were selected first to upgrade to the front, and it happened to be on the way to Vietnam with the squadron, 43rd TAC Fighter Squadron, And we didn't know we were going to Vietnam. We thought we were just going to the Philippines. And that was just a layover till they got Cam Ranh Bay ready for us. They had a temporary runway, temporary taxiway, temporary parking area that was all on aluminum. And
wow.
So we were given instruction before we left MacDill Air Force Base for me and Larry Glenn, the other lieutenant that was going to upgrade, to get all the manuals together that you're going to need and all the documents and all the paperwork that has to be filled out to upgrade to the front. So as soon as we got to the Philippines, that's where we did our upgrading, and we pretty much trained ourselves. We knew more about the airplane than most of the front seaters because they were prior fighter pilots that had no training in radar and missiles, and we were pretty much knowledgeable on that.
Well, I think we have some footage of the F-4 Phantom. I wondered if you would take a look at it and make a couple of comments about what you see going on there. Can we have that footage? You know what these guys are doing? It's an alert drill. We were told they had 5 minutes to get up in the air.
Well, that's what
Mike 01, standing by words. Mike 01, Tango Scramble, contact Sweet Apple.
Does that look familiar? So that's what it was like to take off, but here comes some more.
This is probably a landing pattern. And that's the quickest way to get 4 airplanes landed.
Back a few memories there.
Captain John Puch USAF, third production line of it. It was the only one that had an internal gun. The C model and D model had to have an externally mounted Gatling gun. D model had an internal gun. They eventually did.
They did. Minor detail.
Yeah, definitely. realize that that airplane could also be a drone, since it's got the yellow mark on it. Usually the orange mark is
Wow. This mission was the last one. It's the last mission.
That's from the drone that they brought. They're taking it out to the boneyard.
He puts it down.
Five to 100 feet or 100 feet.
So it's how fast did you say Mach 2 is? 1,300?
About Mach 2 is just a little over 1,000. So Mach 2.2 is just in the order of 1,300 miles an hour, and wow. It's been clocked at 1,500 miles an hour.
Let me ask you a little question here. When you get into being a pilot, I'm sure that's really a lot of responsibility going on. Was there a really scary moment that happened when you were training and you're sitting in this jet and you're going really fast and something scary happened?
Well, there's unusual moments other than in combat you're talking about now, in training missions. And I was on test orders to test airplanes when you change engines and stuff. And in one, and I was testing, I was up for testing an engine, and right at Mach 2, they call it a compressor stall. And the compressor stall is just the air reversing through an engine, and usually it clears pretty quick, but it's a loud boom, and it's a boom that you feel in the whole airplane. And at Mach 2, when you're looking at other things, like you're looking out, they have to control the airflow through the engine to keep the shock wave from going into the compressor. So you have these ramps that move out. And I had my head over the shoulder looking at that to make sure it was programming right. And that had that compressor stall on one engine. And when it does that, it yawed the airplane. At Mach 2, when you're yawing the airplane, it probably only yawed at maybe 5 degrees, but it felt like it turned it around. And by the time I turned around to get the throttles back out of afterburner, it was a bit of adrenaline flowing at that time.
A bit of a rush there, huh?
But I had to test that airplane 3 times. The third time, they found out what the problem was, and it was a simple blockage of air going into the bell mouth at the front of the engine, and they corrected it on the third time around. But I was ready for it the second time.
Second time, yeah, I bet. Now, when you first got orders, you're going on a bombing mission, your first one, you got live ammo attached to that plane, and you're going off. What was it like taking that first load out into combat, your first time into battle?
It was more than exciting because, like I said, I was checking out, going from the back seat to the front seat in the Philippines. We went over to Cameron Bay, and the squadron commander and ops officer, I happened to hear him talking, and what are we going to do with these guys? He says, I don't know which one was saying it to the other one, but I could hear them both talking, and he says, well, their bombs as good as everybody else's in the squadron. And the other one says, well, they're better than most of them in the squadron. He says, they're really good bombers. He says, we might as well let them go. And I thought, they must be talking about us that turn us loose. And the next day, we were on a schedule, and we had 4 750-pound bombs on the gun center line, and as luck would have it, it wasn't just on a bombing mission out, it was close air support. And those guys were really hurting. And here I am, first time out on a combat mission, and these guys are calling in close. And you got a forward air controller on the ground telling you where to drop the bombs in relation to
In other words,
smoke.
they mean drop this in close to where we are.
Well, that's what they're saying,
Yeah.
As I had it, I was getting my combat mission certification on this mission also. So I had a flight evaluator in my back seat, and he said, don't get too close, you don't want to hurt anybody. And I said, these guys are wanting it close, and I'm confident of my bombs, so I'm going to put it where they tell me. So when you pull off, and the fact says, those were good 3, and they're saying, okay, lead, put yours just 12 o'clock to his, and they're giving us reference to that. And I didn't hear another word from the flight examiner after that. And it was the same with the gun. And they were even closer. When you find, with the gun, you can get closer. With the bomb, you can kill people just with a bomb blast to a couple hundred feet. And with the gun, you can get in close. And that was the first mission, and it was the first time that the first Cav over there in Vietnam met the North Vietnamese. That was the first time the North Vietnamese attacked in a major force. And I didn't know it at the time, but they eventually made a movie about that, the commander of that first Cav. And it was after I got out of the Air Force that a friend of mine, Bill Carpenter, is a Special Forces guy, and he says, well, that sounds like the movie that they made. I says, well, what movie? He says, We Were Soldiers. He says, that's coming out. Yeah. And he says, well, that's La Drang Valley. And we don't go by names on the ground. We go by radials and distances and smoke on the ground and that kind of thing. And I said, well, I don't know what it was. I says, I just know we worked with the first Cav, and that was the first time they met the enemy. He says, well, that's it.
Wow, that was pretty exciting, pretty interesting.
And that happened to be my first mission, and don't believe I wasn't puckering on that.
I'll bet you were. How about when you're out on missions, you have a commander with your group. Do you ever find yourself having a conflict with your commander while you're out on a mission?
And not that first time, but the second time I was over when we called it going downtown. It was flying up around Hanoi. And I was pretty much finished with my tour at that duty at Ubon, Thailand, and I launched as a spare airplane. And eventually there was enough cancellations and problems that I ended up as flying with this flight lead as a major. And we were going in on, at first, the primary target was the Tai Nguyen steel mill. And we do missions a lot of times. We have bombs loaded with bombs, and we reloaded with missiles. If the MiGs come up, we jettison our bombs and go after the MiGs to protect the F-105s that are not as maneuverable. And he made a mistake, and we jettisoned our centerline tank over called the Black River. The Black River, and then the Red River is the next one. We jettisoned the tank over the Black River. Instead of jettisoning his external tank, he jettisoned his bombs.
Ah.
And
a little bit of a difference.
I says, Lead, you know what you did? Yeah, I know. He says, well, jettison your bombs. I says, well, how about on the target? I says, I'll go through on the target, and you can go through high and dry. And he says, okay. And we got close to the target, and I don't know whether he got nervous about the situation, but we were alongside the target, and I was trying to get set up to roll in, and I saw 2 parachutes. 2 F-105 pilots that were already ejected. It turned out there were 3, and I didn't see the one. And I don't know whether that had any effect on him or not. He says, "To jettison your bombs." And the one thing you usually never say anything to lead. Lead is in charge, and you just go along with it. Don't interrupt anything. And I said, "I thought on the target." He says, "Jettison your bombs too," and we're going mid-cap. And well, I jettisoned my bombs, and we are the last airplane in, so we're the last airplane out. And the second mistake that irritated me, the Iron Hand was at F-105s that suppressed surface-to-air missiles. They're the last ones out also, so we're coming out together. And I identified them. And I said, told Lead, I says, "We got the Iron Hand at 10 o'clock. He says, "We'll go ID them." I said, "I already did." And I even said their call sign. And he says, "We'll identify them anyway." And that's just something you don't do, is roll in on somebody's 6 o'clock position. And I told the Iron Hand, I says, "We're coming across your 6 o'clock. We're friendlies." And they, I don't know why they did it. They made as much a mistake as he did. They rolled in on us, and here we are.
Holy cow.
And I select afterburner. I'm doing a big roll around Lead, so they're not going to track on me. And the Iron Hand guy says, "Well, we're not tracking on too." He says,
wow.
And so on the way out, you know, when things start to go bad, they go bad all the way. And we're climbing out, and to go cold mic, both cockpits have to go cold mic. The backseater says, "I want to go cold mic to wipe off my sweat." And I said, "Okay," so I went cold mic. And so we're over the mountains, and I'm going to take my mask off. So I look at the cabin pressure, and it's the same as our altitude. I said, "Oh, no, we lost cabin pressure." And I says, I told my backseater, "Get your mask back on. Go to 100%. He says, "Boy, I'm kind of woozy." I said, "Yeah, did you look at your cockpit pressure?" And we're already at like 26,000 feet. And I said, "Lead, take us down to 15. I said, "We're no cabin pressure." So here we are. And we have to refuel, air-to-air refuel. So we got to get the tanker down to our altitude too. So we're having to get, you know, things just start snowballing.
Yeah.
Once you make one mistake, it seems like the mistakes just
roll into a lot more.
But the point I'm going to make with you, when we got back, usually the backseater writes up the form, fill out the form. I said, "I'll fill out the form. You go to intelligence." I said, "I don't want to be in there." I says, "I'll get court-martialed." I says, "I don't want to be there." So it wasn't 2 minutes. My backseater's back out. He says, "Squadron commander and ops officers there, they want to see you in intelligence." I says, "I told you, I wanted you to debrief them." He says, "No, they want to see you." So I went in, and he says, "What's your impression of the mission?" I says, "He was a flight lead. He ought to tell you what that is." And it started out with the dumb, we'll use SOB, and jettisoned his bomb over the black. And they said, "No, just settle down." And then I went through the scenario, and I spelled out everything he did wrong. And I said, I wasn't at all pleased with that mission. And after a while, I felt bad about it. It was just 2 or 3 weeks after that he got shot down over North Vietnam, and he was a POW till the end of the war. Yeah. So
that didn't turn out well for him, did it?
But that was, you know, that's history, and that's one thing you do. Kind of when things go bad in combat, you're not afraid to mention it to a senior ranking officer, and they know that when they've done something wrong, that they've got to accept it.
Can you describe a successful mission that turned out to be more than you expected it to be?
Well, one that I can think about is we were coming. Well, it turned out our flight lead got shot down a few days before this, and the ops officer was leading our flight. And our regular flight lead goes over details, and we know everything is exactly right. Well, the ops officer, he was one that he was leading. He didn't want to hear anything from anybody else. And we refueled out of the Gulf of Tonkin, and we went in, and we were a strike MIG-cap mission. We had missiles and we had bombs. And we were supposed to be in ahead of the F-105 cell, which a lot of times is 30 or 40 airplanes. And he didn't go to the end of the refueling route, which we usually do. And you want to pack as much fuel into the airplane as you can. And we keep cycling through. And that was our procedure. We'd cycle through it and keep the tanks full. Because the first guy, by the time you get to the last guy, he's used a lot of fuel. And he dropped off well ahead of the end of the refueling route. And it turned out we were about 10 minutes early on time on target anyway. And once we got to coast in north of Haiphong Harbor, the cell leader said that he's 10 minutes late. So here we have 20 minutes. And we're already 20 minutes in ahead of them. So we're of no help to them as MIG-cap. But we're committed. We don't have any fuel to hold, so we have to go to the target. And the weather was bad. And there's a high ridge that's north of Haiphong Harbor that goes toward Hanoi. And we always flew that high ridge because they don't put any big guns on top of that ridge. Well, the ceiling was low. It was like 1,000 feet. And usually you never go into something where you're that low and that close to guns. But while we were over that Phantom Ridge, we weren't worried too much about big guns. Well, as soon as we got off the end of that Phantom Ridge, it cleared up. And we're in, and that's about the time we found out that the cell is canceling somewhere between the coast and there. I don't remember exactly now. But here we're going in, and there's nobody to shoot at but us. We're the lone flight in there. And we're no sooner we drop off of Phantom Ridge and we see a MiG coming down, and it had to be a MiG. It was far enough away you couldn't tell exactly, but it was near the Chinese border, so the U.S. airplanes didn't fly up there normally, so it had to be a MiG coming down. It was coming down through a contrail level, and that's how we spotted it. It was coming through the contrail level. And then once the heavy shooting started and the surface-to-air missiles started firing, you forget about that MiG, because he's not a threat right now, but these missiles are. And there's missiles going by, and you're jinking to avoid these surface-to-air missiles and also the anti-aircraft fire. And you're also trying to keep from going underneath the blast above you, because there's iron falling out of the air and you can run into it. Yeah. So you got all these things going on and everything going in your head. And you're getting close to the target, and there's still missiles firing and still anti-aircraft. And one of the episodes I'll never forget, because I broke away from the missile and it went by, and when I broke back, I was right over an anti-aircraft site, and it couldn't have been more than 500 feet below me. Wow. Between 500 and 1,000 feet. And my backseater was a guy that had already been shot down once. And I said, look at those little guys down there, or whatever I called them. Yeah. And they're running around in there, and their guns pointed opposite to where I came in. But I knew when I turned away that I'm going to solve one of their problems, because that gun's going to swing around, and I'm going to be an easy hit for them if I don't do some violent maneuvering. So I do some big barrel rolls going away from them, and fortunately no hits there. And I knew we had to be getting close to the target, and I'm trying to ID the other two guys in a flight, because number 2 was supposed to put flak suppression down near the target, so he was away from us anyway. And there's the target. I stroked the afterburner, popped up 12,000 feet, roll in, and dropped the bombs, and it was a petroleum dump, and there was a real blaze going on, black smoke rolling out of there when I look back, and the next thing I see is the master caution light. And when the master caution light comes on and you're downtown right there by Hanoi, your heart stops. And you got a panel there that tells you why that came on, low fuel light. And I says, oh man, that's just okay. And I says, what's the code word for bingo fuel? I says, forget that, emergency fuel. What's the code word for that? We had code words for everything, and they probably figured them all out before we did. And he gave me the code word, I gave it to the lead, and I pulled up alongside and I rolled up, and he says, you're not losing any. Well, that was one of the better things, but I'm figuring out how far I can make it with the fuel I had. And I thought, well, I can make it to Phantom Ridge. And I thought, well, at least if I get over Phantom Ridge, maybe the Navy can come get me. and I was ready to jettison my drop tanks, and I said, that fuel's got to be somewhere. I says, maybe I'm getting a little bit out of those drop tanks. So I switched them back on, and I got to Phantom Ridge, and I've got enough fuel to make it to the ocean. I said, well, at least if I get to the ocean, Navy can get me now. And then I says, well, I've got enough now once I was in the ocean. I said, maybe I can make it to the tanker. And so that's the thing. When it starts going bad, things keep going bad.
Really
but this happened to be things were going right. And so we climbed out, and there were plenty of tankers because all the other aircraft canceled out. So Red Crown was the controlling agency off over the Gulf of Tonkin. And they gave us a tanker, and Lead was lined up on that tanker, and you turn the tanker at 19 miles head on, and he turns, and then you come in and join up. He was in his turn. Here he has a basket on, and we can't refuel with a basket on. And I thought, is that a basket? And I asked him, whatever his call sign was, is that a basket? Yeah, that's affirmative. This is Red Crown. We need a tanker that's probe only. and here's the funny part: it's Fred Crow, the late flight lead, the lieutenant colonel. He says, "4, you want to lead?" And he was being facetious, but I was puckering. I was running out of fuel. I says, "Roger,
Yeah.
come by on the right."
I'll lead you right
And
out of here.
I didn't find this out till we got back. The backseater says, "What the hell's he doing?" He says, "You asked him if he wanted to lead."
That's
so
funny.
I'm arranging with the tanker, and I'm confirming and make sure that they're probe only. And I says, "Okay, backseater." I says, "We're not turning them at 19 miles. We're turning them at 17 miles. We're not chasing these guys any."
Yeah.
So we turned them 17 miles, and it came in and joined up and hooked up real quick. And I said, "Give me half of my fuel. The other ones are low on fuel too." And I said, "I'll come back and get the rest of it." So we all refueled and made it back.
All day.
Funny part, we pulled in the dearming area and put on the brakes, and the armament guy jumped back. And I said, didn't come that close to him. I thought, he must be nervous. So I didn't think too much about it. And I pulled in the chocks to park the airplane. Same thing, I put in the crew chief. He jumps back, and then he points at the wing tank. Here, there was a hole in the end of it. And I apparently hit some of that flak that was falling out of the air, and it made a hole in there. And it's transferring fuel with compressed air. So the air is going out of that hole instead of forcing out fuel. And that's why I was getting more fuel out of those tanks. I was getting a little bit out, but not at a fast rate.
Not at the rate.
And I had about 7 minutes of fuel left when I got on the tanker. It was like 700 pounds of fuel. And that wouldn't have gotten me to Da Nang was the closest base. And I wouldn't have got to Da Nang if I didn't make that hookup.
Yeah, I've got just one more quick question. When you take off and you go into combat, did you ever consider you might get knocked down? Does that come into your mind at all, that, hey, when I'm going up there, I might not come back, I might get knocked down?
Well, you prepare for that, but I never really had the thought, except that mission. I didn't think I'd make it any further than the Phantom Ridge, and I'm going to have to eject it. But that was all planning now. You don't think about anything else other than what you got going on. But you prepare for it. And one of the big items that you have to get rescued is a survival radio. You have to have radio contact, because most of the places, the trees are so thick and so tall that to get a helicopter in to find you, you have to talk them in with the radio. And there's one in the seat pack survival kit. And remember, these are low bid items, so I don't count on the one working in my seat pack. And I had one in my G-suit pocket and one in my survival vest. So I had 3 radios and 2 batteries strapped together. So that was the one item. And I had other survival stuff on the vest that worked around my
So you were
parachute
prepared in case
I was
anything
prepared
happened.
for that. But I didn't think too much about it. But it's something you want to prepare for and think about, and how to get the rescue there. Yeah. And the people, some of the real heroes in the Air Force are the helicopter pilots that fly those rescue helicopters. They go in to rescue fighter pilots that just got shot down, that are doing 600 or 700 miles an hour, and these guys are going in under 100 miles an hour with a helicopter at 100 feet.
Yeah.
And quite often they get shot down. They go in pairs. There's 2 helicopters and 2 A-1Es for ground suppression, ground fire suppression. And like I mentioned, that this ops officer was leading our flight because our flight commander got shot down. Well, he got shot down. We were on our second pass on a truck park in Laos. He got shot down, and he drilled through us what we need to do, and we knew what we had to do. And my position happened to be I was rolling on our target, and my position was I was a high man, so I'm calling in rescue, and I would lay awake thinking about how can you speed that up, because the rule of thumb was if you could be rescued in less than 30 minutes, your chances were a lot higher. So that 30-minute cutoff was something I was thinking about. How can you cut down on that time? And one of the things that I figured out is if you could call directly to the helicopter rescue team that was closest to you, that would save you going through one of the control agencies.
Yeah.
And you might save 2 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever by the time they figured out what the positions were.
Every minute would count.
And when I told my backseater, I said, set in guard channel. I said, 243.0. He says, I thought rescue was, I said, set in 243.0. And so I broadcasted on that, and that was right to Nakhon Phanom, which is the closest rescue one to where Breck got shot down. And once you're transmitting on that, everybody in that area within radio range hears that, because they're monitoring. All our radios are set to monitor guard channel. You monitor it, but you don't transmit unless you set it in. And as luck would have it, there was 2 F-105s that obviously heard that transmission, because once I got the rescue going, I started talking to the control agency, and I says, well, we need a tanker, because these guys are going to be low on fuel, is doing rescap. And I says, any other aircraft in the area that can do rescap while we're going? And he says, we have 2 F-105s. He says, they're in the area. And I no sooner said that, and here they came down. They must have been orbiting overhead, because they came down through the flight, and they took over. You didn't hear a word out of them until they came down through, and the lead says, I got the one furthest east, you got the one to the west. And they says, I got him. And they went down, and the guys on the ground confirmed that, yeah, those were the targets. We went to the tanker, refueled, and by the time we got back, the rescue was all completed. And a helicopter, well, first, the backseater, Joe Merrick, got shot through the foot while he was in the hoist. So the enemy was that close to him.
Wow.
And he got shot through the foot. They got him in the helicopter. The helicopter gets shot down. They land in an area that was an open area that they made an emergency landing. The second helicopter came in and landed about 100 yards away. They get out of this one, go into the second helicopter. And Joe said this later. He says, we were heading out, and I thought, boy, we got it made now. And they made a 180-degree turn. He says, where are we going? He says, we got to pick up that other guy. Joe says, I said, I got shot twice in 30 minutes. He says, and now we're going back. And he says, what's our luck now? And they got back and picked up Breck without any problem, without any further problem. But
that was good.
Our job was to go back and destroy that helicopter that was on the ground, because it was all completed. But that's the kind of people that are real heroes, helicopter rescue people.
Well,
they go in to do that kind of stuff, and they are real heroes.
We'll be celebrating, not celebrating, but remembering some of those people Memorial Day soon here. We're just about out of time, but I just wanted to thank you, John, for sharing this experience with us. Not many of us get to know what combat is like, but thank you very much for your service.
Well, I don't mind doing it, and I don't like to really bother people with that kind of stuff when they ask about it. If they ask about it, I'm more than willing to talk to them about it, but I don't want to bore them with stuff that they're not interested in.
I'm sure this was very interesting. You did a great job, and thank you very much. And for our audience who's been watching, I hope you learned something, and thank you very much, and see you next time. Are we rolling and but we're back already? We're fast around here. So, how about we start out with a question here. How long have you been a director at the Chamber of Commerce? That's, I guess, a good starting point.
Okay. My first official day was March the 17th of this year. But prior to that, I was on the board for 4 years, and I was president for 3 years. And I stepped away for 2 years, and I came back.
What did you do before becoming a director? What was your...
Well, I worked at Cracker Barrel here in St. Clairsville for 11 years as a retail manager. And then I left to go to the private sector. I worked a couple little jobs, and it just wasn't fulfilling enough for me. So when this position came along, I thought I was meant for this job.
You like it a lot?
Oh, I love this job.
Now, that's something I think maybe some of our viewers might be interested in is what does the Chamber of Commerce do, that the function that's performed?
Well, what we do, we are a nonprofit, and we bring together businesses and we network. And say I get people who ask me questions. We're coming into St. Clairsville. Where can we go rent houses? Where's a great place to eat? What can we do? We will call different businesses and say, hey, I just had John Doe call, and I'm going to send them your way because they're looking for housing, which we just had this week. I had a couple that came in from Arizona. They were traveling through on 40, and they wanted to know where was a good place to go pull over and have lunch. Like, what was our parks like?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we get all kind of things, just people inquiring and businesses inquiring.
Oh, good. I have a note here that about a donation. Who was it that donated the money that the 2 high school seniors received at Oglebay for their 4.0 GPA and higher?
That was us as the chamber.
The Chamber?
Mm-hmm. We have done that for years. We give 2 scholarships to deserving seniors in St. Clairsville. So this morning, Pam Ryan, who's our marketing event coordinator, she and I went up to Oglebay. They had their senior picnic. There's 140 St. Clairsville seniors. And there were 13 out of that 140 that had 4.0 or above. So what we did is we put their name in a hat and we picked 2. So that's that's how we got them because it was fair that way.
Well, that's kind of nice to encourage the young people to work hard in school.
Oh.
Because they really need to do more of that.
They do.
So hats off to the Chamber for that one.
Thank you.
How about events that are coming up sometime in the future here? Do you have any on mind that you can tell us about?
July 27th, we have our Corks and Forks, which is our networking event that we've had for several years, and it is really well received. And it's $25 a ticket, and it's for members or non-members. It doesn't matter. But it's a great networking event that we have, and it's going to be at Park Health, which is out Mark Kennedy Place. It's out that way. And you get, for that $25, you get 6 tickets. We're going to have wine tasting from Casa de Vino in Wheeling.
Oh, that sounds good.
And this year, for the first time, because of popular demand, we're going to have craft beer tasting as well. And Whisk is going to do the appetizers.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's really well received. We have about 80 to 90 people who come in, and you bring your business cards, you network, and that's one of the things at the chambers we do. We bring people together.
And that'll be when again? What's that date one more time?
That is our July the 27th.
July 27th. That sounds like something every business person or aspiring business person should be at.
It's something really, it's fun, and it's low key, but yet, like I said, bring your business cards because it's a great way to network and to talk about your business. And the other thing we're having is our annual dinner, which we've had 4 of them, I do believe. This year, we're going to have it at Undo's. We've never had it there before, so we're going to have it at Undo's. The price of the ticket has not been determined yet. Our speaker is Alan Mallory from Canada. He and his family, they climbed Mount Everest, and they actually hold the record for the first family to climbed the Mount Everest. And he's got some really exciting stories to tell us.
That sounds like it'd be really neat.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Any other things you can tell us that come to mind?
Well, the one thing that we're real excited about is, I don't know if you've noticed the banners for Memorial Day down Main Street. The American Legion did that. They bought those banners. And the mayor had asked us, the chamber, if we wanted to be involved in that. So the American Legion went ahead and did that because they needed them now. So we are going to do, as a chamber, we are going to have donations for our Christmas banners, because the mayor brought me one down and it's torn and tattered and it looks really bad. It won't withstand another winter. So because we do the Christmas parade, the St. Clairsville Area Chamber of Commerce, we put on the Christmas parade with the help of this production
By the
company.
way, you do a nice job with that Christmas
We
parade.
do. It's a great Christmas parade. So we decided that as a chamber that we wanted to do the banners. So we're having donations. We opened it up to our business members. It's $40 because each banner costs $40. We need 50 of them. And we wanted to say, Merry Christmas, whatever, but we need to have them and everything in I need it by August the 2nd to keep the price that I got for them, because I got a really good price. But we need everything in by October so they can be ordered and put up for the Christmas parade.
Well, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Anything else going on?
Just everything that, anything that a business needs, we are there for them.
Okay.
We do host a safety council, which is absolutely fantastic. I just got really involved in that. And it's any business that, and you don't have to be a member of the chamber, but we would like you to be. But any business can join the safety council, and you get 2 to 4% back on your workman's comp from the BWC, which a lot of people don't know about. And that's something that we're really going to push this time, and because our new season starts in July, so it's July to June.
Well, that's good. So I guess we have a hat tip to the American Legion for
Yes.
That was excellent.
Yes.
And I think we're just about out of time.
Okay.
And I want to thank you for coming in and sharing this information with our friends.
Thank
and Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you all next time. We got a little light going on here. Well, that was I want to start a little bit today with some commentary that I made. I made some notes, and I'm going to stick with the notes so that I don't forget anything. I think it's important, and a message we all should know and think about. Truth and liberty in the media is good for every American, but media bias is only good for political elites who seek to mislead and control us by using the media. And that's serious business in our country. We are barely into the Trump presidency, and the media is pounding us. And they're pounding us with negative distortions on a daily basis. Distortion happens by twisting the facts or just hiding the news by not reporting it, ignoring it. What are we not being told when the media repeats unfounded stories about things like an unfounded Russian collusion? For example, President Trump's visit to Saudi Arabia, Jerusalem, and Vatican is historic. It was an enormous news story, but the media spent more time talking about Russia. Let's review underreported bias, underreported news. President Trump has returned religious freedom to the public square. He returned freedom to the pulpit. That's huge. He has accomplished cutting illegal border crossings to a trickle and is working on the wall that he mentioned so many times. He is deporting thousands of violent criminals. He has slapped the left political correctness in the face by being a plain-spoken guy. He just tells it like it is. Keystone Pipeline is approved and creating thousands of jobs. Here in our own area, he has saved thousands of coal miner jobs. He signed 13 congressional review resolutions. That is historic. 30 conservative executive orders and growing. He worked with Congress to enact 28 laws in the first 100 days. He rolled back more regulations than any president in history. And all of that in spite of unprecedented obstruction from the Democrats and some Republicans. He has signed more legislation than any president since Truman. President Trump also has made great strides in restoring our foreign policy objectives, and America's once again respected around the world. He is rebuilding our depleted military. Numerous large manufacturers have redirected billions of dollars back to America for jobs here at his encouragement. And did I mention Neil Gorsuch was appointed to the Supreme Court? There's a lot more, so it escapes me how the media can choose to ignore all of these accomplishments. The president is fighting for all of us, and he's fighting all of the Democrats and some of the Republicans, along with the media and the lobbyists and the piranha who continually attack him from the media for everything he does or doesn't do. President Trump is in a street fight with Washington establishment swamp creatures. That's who he's fighting with. And he's doing it for us because he is a patriot. The least we can do is cheer him on and understand fighting with swine is very difficult and sometimes dirty. Street fights are unpleasant to watch, but necessary to bring back America. Remember, our founding fathers put everything they had on the line when they pledged our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. The least we can do is respect our new president. The best is yet to come. I'm Bob Connors. We'll see you next time.